Hello, Tahitia.
Hello, Melonya. How are you?
I am happy to see you and welcome, folks, to MT Fridays. I am Melonya,
I'm Tahisha.
and together,
We are MT Fridays, ready to fill the brain drain one unscripted conversation at a time.
here we are. Here we are. It's Friday. It's a little kind of gloomy here, but I want to talk about happiness today.
Well, I'm all about happiness if you're want to talk about happiness. I'm going to talk about allergies because they're killing me today. And why 2025 might be the worst allergy season we've seen um, for a variety of reasons.
Gee, that doesn't sound very happy.
Well, it could be happy.
Allergies never are happy. Well, welcome, y'all. So let's let's get to it. For those of you who are joining us or who may join us, welcome. I am a leadership coach. I do coaching, training, facilitating, speaking. Have a podcast called The Sovereignty Sage, which is women empowerment. And Tahisha is a brilliant ICF certified coach. She is a DEI health equity advocate. She is out there fighting for all of our rights to uh, good health and representation. She's a beautiful public speaker, a nurse, and content creator. So that's who we are. And so let's just jump into our conversation, shall we?
Yes, let's go. Let's
Well,
go.
there's an article that was in the New York Times, and I listened to it this morning, and I didn't get a chance to digest it, so we're going to do that now. But it's called "The Happiest Country in the World Isn't What You Think It Is." And what's interesting about this is that you have the usual suspects, right? Every year. Well, let me ask you, what do you think is the happiest country in the world?
Oh, I honestly think the happiest country in the world is probably someplace like, I don't know, like Finland? I don't
Bing.
know.
Yep.
Was I right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
According
gosh.
according to the World 2025 World Happiness Report, which was released last month, Finland. I'm sorry. The happiest country in the world is Finland, trailed closely by Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden.
Hmm.
And these Nordic countries typically top the list in terms of the happiest places on the earth. And what makes this article a little bit interesting, or quite interesting, is that what they found is that excuse me, much of what folks considered happiness is often tied to the economic well-being of the country, right?
Mm.
So these countries are democratic countries and are economically strong countries, right? And then when you move down that list, at the bottom of the 147 countries that are part of this assessment, Afghanistan, Sierra Leone, Lebanon, and Malawi are some of the most unhappiest places in the world. And the thinking is, well, the more money you have as a country, the happier you will be. And they say the International Monetary Fund encourages trade and economic growth on the theory that happiness increases with material prosperity, right? And so that is what oftentimes. I thought this was moving up. Interesting. This didn't move up. Oftentimes, that is what is sort of the basis of what um, people consider happiness. But what this article goes on to say is that another 5-year study has been is being done, and what I did not realize is that the basis by which when these the, the original assessment is done, they ask one question, and that one question for those countries that participate is that it's something that goes along on a ladder with 11 rungs. Where do you see yourself on that rung, at the top of the rung or at the bottom of the rung? And that, in terms of your happiness score. And that's what they kind of base that on, that um, uh, one question. But this another study goes on to ask, what if we broaden that beyond monetary, right? Wonder
Mhm.
if we look at some other things, like people's affiliation with each other, just other areas of happiness. So here's it. Respondents are asked a single question to imagine an 11 rung ladder whose top and bottom are the best and worst possible lives, and to place their life on one of the rungs. And this metric, known as the life evaluation, can be a useful piece of information, but happiness is almost certainly a more complex phenomena, right? And so this other study looks at some different things, besides wealth and status, but other aspects of well-being. And I'm trying to find ah if we were to examine not just life evaluation, but also relationships with family members and friends and community and political participation and health and prevailing emotions, a sense of life's purpose, feelings of financial security, and so on, we could better understand what it means to live a good life and how governments and international institutions can help make people happier, right? And so they are setting out to do the Nature Mental Health is, I think, it's called the Global Flourishing Study, is a 5-year project that poses more than 100 questions to more than 200,000 people across 22 countries on 6 continents, combining answers to questions regarding several domains of well-being, health, happiness, meaning, character, social relationships, and material prosperity. And what they found are that these countries that were, by that original study, always hit were the top. Our findings present a different picture of global well-being. As expected, Sweden, for example, had high scores for life evaluation behind only Israel, another typical standout in the World Happiness Report. When we widened the aperture, however, the picture changed. Sweden had only the 13th highest composite flourishing score, essentially tied with the United States, and considerably lower than Indonesia, the Philippines, even Nigeria, whose 2023 gross domestic product per capita was just 2% of America. So, what they're finding is that when you broaden the spectrum of what goes into happiness, the countries that typically scored high, which were really kind of based on more standard of living, um, they actually drop on the happiness scale, which is really interesting. In some countries that you wouldn't necessarily think, because they don't have the GDP as other, these other countries, but they actually have, in some ways, greater levels of happiness. So it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting study to watch over the next 5 years.
Yeah, that is interesting because, when I think about it, I was walking my dog earlier today. I was walking Bravo. And as I walked around the neighborhood, the greatest thing that I thought I had achieved when I was in my early 20s was to move into this neighborhood, if I'm being honest with you. It was like the pinnacle of my this sounds sad because I'm not a very materialistic person, but I had been raised my entire life that one day the greatest thing or the greatest thing that you could achieve as a human being in the United States was to own your own house and to own your own house in a nice neighborhood. And the neighborhood that I live in, I'm going to throw it out there because why not?
No,
So,
don't.
well, I want to give this sort of what I want to create is sort of like a seesaw.
Mhm.
So, if you live in New Jersey, there are some very poor cities in New Jersey that people know of. And then there are some very well to do suburbs in New Jersey that people know of. And what I will say about the suburb that I live in now as an adult is that I live on the outskirts of that suburb, touching another city, which is well known for not being well off. But, um, I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, which is an impoverished area in New Jersey. It was a flourishing area in the 20s, in the in the flapper days, but since then it has declined. Not a lot of industry, not a lot of employment, and that's where I grew up as a kid. So the only thing that I could have fantasies about or what I thought was happiness was, man, if my folks could just live in a house that had a door that you opened into the house, cuz I lived above a store in downtown Patterson. So we didn't even have one of those things. We didn't have a garage. There was no place to park your car. I don't know where my parents parked. It wasn't top of my mind because I didn't drive. I rode a public bus to get to school, not a yellow school bus. That was not a thing for me. Um, so, my dream was just like the suburbs. I thought all happiness just came from the suburbs. Because when you watch the Brady Bunch and you watched all these shows on TV, they were in houses. That was happiness. Happiness was material things. And so as I walked around the neighborhood, I was like, this was the dream that I had as a kid, right? To live in this nice neighborhood, to live in the suburbs. And I thought, why am I so unhappy sometimes? If this is the dream of happiness, I should be happy all the time. I should just be like, yo, happiness flowing out of me. But I'm not. Because sometimes I'm not happy because of materialistic reasons, right? I have debts I have to pay. You have to pay to be in this area, right? When it comes to basing happiness on materialism, it requires some input in order to get something out of it. And so when you talk about the GDP and happiness, that makes sense to me because I think about the days in Patterson and what my life was like as a kid. Yeah, we didn't have a lot of money, but there were some moments when I was happy beyond happy. It didn't matter we didn't have a lot of things. I was still happy. So I think it is interesting when we start to conflate happiness and material things as they mean the same thing. Because I do believe I would find I was used to just finding happiness out of things. And so as I was walking around the neighborhood, I was like, wow, I should be everyone here should just be so fucking happy to be in this suburban neighborhood. But I know that they're not, and I know that people are not. So, happiness is not material things. So I completely agree with that because some of my happiest times were actually growing up in Patterson and we didn't have a lot, but there was something about I knew my neighbors. And I just gonna throw this out there. I don't know my neighbors by choice in my suburban neighborhood because I'm not the friendliest person walking around with my dog just because he agitates easily. So, if you see me on the streets and I don't say hello to you and you're in my neighborhood, it's because I'm unfriendly. Okay. But I do have to say, I was probably the happiest I was when I was a little kid growing up in Patterson. And we didn't have a lot. I'm not sure my parents were happy though. So I'll throw that out there too.
Yeah,
'Cause it's a struggle.
ignorance is bliss, okay?
Yes, it
Because
is.
when you're a kid, you have no idea. What was also interesting about this study, across the whole sample of 22 countries, the overall national composite flourishing actually decreased slightly as GDP per capita rose, right? The only high income countries that ranked in the top half of composite flourishing were Israel and Poland. Most of the
Hmm,
developed countries in the study reported less meaning, fewer and less satisfying relationships and communities, and fewer positive emotions than did their poorer counterparts. Most of the countries that reported high overall composite flourishing may not have even been in rich economic terms, but they tended to be rich in friendships, marriages, and community involvement, especially involvement in religious communities.
hmm.
Japan, where only 3% of the participants reported attending religious services at least weekly, had the lowest reported composite flourishing, as well as the lowest scores in many individual facets of flourishing, such as a sense of life's meaning and social relationships. Indonesia, by contrast, where 75% of the participants reported attending religious services at least weekly, had the highest scores both for composite flourishing and for individual facets of flourishing. Indonesia is often contrasted unfavorably with Japan in discussions of international development, cited as an example of so-called middle income trap in which economic growth stalls before reaching high income levels. This is true so far as it goes, but our study suggests that the focus on economic growth tells only a part of the story. And so that's very interesting. And I remember, and when I thought about that religious aspect, when I was a practicing Christian and I went to, there was a church that I used to go to, even though I'm shy, and my dad's wife went to that church, and my dad used to go to that church. She used to take my dad to the church. There was, there were people that you saw every week, and when you after the service was over, you gave people hugs, and people gave you hugs, um, and it was really, I miss that part of it. I'm no longer a practicing Christian, but there was something. And my dad's wife is very involved in the church, and that's her community, and so I can see how religious affiliation can really serve as another facet of building, community with folks. And I, as a shy introvert, the more I'm coming to appreciate the idea of community. And I think that's one of the things that, when this composite flourishing study is looking at just other aspects of our lives that either tend to. I was talking to a neighbor the other day because I'm trying to help one of my neighbor next door place a puppy, a dog, and I reached out to a neighbor of mine, um, who who just lost her dog, and we exchanged numbers, and she goes, "Oh," and she started talking about some personal things. She goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to talk about these things." I'm like, "No, it's no problem." She goes, "I don't have anybody to talk to." She has her daughter and a grandson and a son-in-law, but it was really, she's originally from a different country, and so there can't, I'm certain with her there can probably be a little bit of a language barrier, and she's a hardworking person, but just being able to be in community, I think, is a really, it's a big, I think it's really essential for a happy life. And that's not something that I really appreciate or even thought about when I was younger.
Mm. Well, and I think religion can be one of the way organized religion can be one of the ways that creates this sort of umbrella underneath to go and find community. But there are other ways that people can seek that too. Um, it depends on how active you are to create community in the area you live in. And I do feel like that has taken sort of a backseat. Um, with individuals. Like I find myself less likely to join community organizations, which could be church like for me, right? Like there's all kinds of ways that human beings can get involved, but it's do we get involved? And how much does that lead to or not lead to our happiness? Because we all have a part to play in our own happiness. Um, and also, how much do our parents sort of show that, part of happiness is being in community? And I love the fact that, you were showed like, hey, church could be a way to have community. But even examples of that show you that something outside of yourself leads to community, that you can find community not just at work. Many of us get our happiness and our work and our community from work, and that
I think
can't be
that's
the only
changing. I
place.
think that's changing. I mean, because things have become so transactional in a sense that I mean, people go to work to make the money, and then they want to be free.
Mm.
Because because I still do work in HR and have worked in HR, and it was so funny because I just remember, oh God, Lord, we would put so much effort in creating, communal opportunities within the organization. Like it could be a boat ride, on our lake because I'm near Lake Erie, or something after work. But there was this. It was kind of a fun. It wasn't fun for the HR people because we were working, but for the rest of the folks, we had an outing at the zoo one evening, right? And there was food and you could walk around and all that. And as soon as people were done eating, it's like, okay, it's time to go. You know what I mean? So I think in years past people found more camaraderie and community at work. I don't know if that's the case these days. And I don't even think it has anything to do from work from home or whatever. I just think that people look at work very differently. I come in, I do my job, and then I want my time. I don't, my pleasure isn't, I might like my coworkers, but my pleasure isn't necessarily to spend my personal time with them outside of work. But one thing, no, watching a friend of mine who was more of an extrovert, and for many years, I had a community because of my friendship with her, right? She was the extrovert, so I tagged along and went to places that she was invited to or shared her friends or whatnot. But one of the things that I really paid attention to about her is that she really made an effort. She really made an effort to connect with people and to build a community. I have another friend who lives out in California. They call her the mayor on her street because when I was there some years ago visiting, a new couple had moved in, and she went and introduced herself, and everybody in the neighborhood. I felt like I was at Mr. Rogers' house because the doorbell would ring, and for me, somebody just ringing my doorbell sends terror in me. Like, oh my God, who is visiting me? They didn't let me know. And she was like, hello. And I was like, that's, you know what I mean? She intentionally built that. And I look at my life and I go, I never put that kind of energy and focus in the community. And I kind of wish that I had. And of course I still can, except for it's not in my nature to do.
It's gotta be feel natural, right? It's
Mhm.
gotta be in your nature. My mom is a little bit like that. She like, we walk the dogs together when I go visit them, and, like, she knows everyone, like, to the point where it sort of annoys me because 'cause I'm not really a big say hi to everybody, but she's like, "Hello, how's this? Oh, how's this?" And I'm like, "Can't I wanna get" to that. But then I think about it and I'm like, this is why, like, she's always seems so happy. Like, she just knows everybody, she's smiling at everybody. She knows everybody's, I hate to say business, everybody's business. Like, but there's a certain personality that's friendly like that. I don't think I could be friendly like that, even if I wanted to be. Like, when I try, I feel like I'm faking it.
Well, you
Like,
know what's so funny? My dad's wife, Karen, and I, and it was in 2013. We went on a Mediterranean cruise, right? There was this couple that they just loved her. They were a sweet couple. I think they were from Ireland. They were really nice people, but she was always talking to somebody. I don't think I made. I didn't make one connection. You know what I mean? And she made all sorts of connections because that's her. And that's really natural for her, you know what I mean? And I can appreciate those people who do that. But I also know I put more effort into trying to connect with people and family, and that's again because I'm an introvert and a solitary soul, so that is really something that doesn't come naturally to me. But it's really very it was very interesting because again we see on that list, always Finland, Denmark, Sweden, always at the top of the list. But it's really interesting for this other study, this other ongoing study, when they start to look at deeper dimensions. Those countries that were ranked at top didn't necessarily come in at the top when they factored in these other things.
and it's really the interrelationships that you have with people that really can make you happy or not happy, because there is a loneliness epidemic. To Our last health person had said, there's a loneliness epidemic going on, and how
By
do
Beck
we
Murphy.
yes, and how do we address that? Especially in a country that wants to isolate even a little bit more, right? So how do you come out of loneliness when you are embodying more isolation activities, when you're more afraid? How do you not be lonely when you're putting out the energy of, like, the vibes of, I don't want community?
Can I
Um,
ask you this? So,
mhm.
what is happiness for you?
Oh, happiness for me. Happiness for me is a good book. No. It
Mhm.
really is. Like, I could be happy in a good book, but I think real happiness would be, if I could just go about my day doing the things that I like to do, reading, not interacting with people, that would make me happy. Um, that sounded terrible. I take
No,
that back.
you don't have to take. See, here's the thing. You have to be true to yourself. You know what I'm saying? You're an introvert, right? And you've been very open to share that you are on the autistic spectrum, right? And so I think all of these things that they factor in on who we are. I would not be happy if I were surrounded by people all the time. That would drain my energy, would make me very anxious. I would not feel a sense of happiness in that situation. You know, for me, what I'm starting to understand, I wish I had learned this about myself earlier on, is I'm very much I'm a nature person, right? So I would not, if I knew back in my youth what I know now, I would have not stayed in a city. I would
Mhm.
have been in a more rural environment. I texted you yesterday saying that there's just so much noise, right? And I live on a really quiet street, but I can hear there's a factory a few blocks down, and there's an engine that has this low hum that's in the background, and you can hear traffic and and these things, if you're sensitive to sound, really disturb your nervous system. When I went glamping some years ago, when I first thing that I realized when I got out of the car, I was in the Catskills, was the quiet. And that just, it felt like a blanket, just like a blanket that was just put over me. And immediately my nervous system responded to that. So, happiness for me would be to be in nature, right? To be where the only sounds I heard were the sounds of nature, to be in a place where I could see the stars at night, you know, um, and that there would be some sense of community. I probably would flourish in a commune somewhere, right? Just enough people that's community, but able to go back into my space and be chill, you know?
That sounds lovely.
Yeah. I just want calm and quiet. So let's talk about your allergies, shall we?
Oh, goodness gracious. So my my allergies have been acting up for a couple of weeks now. And I thought it was maybe just because the weather was getting warmer, that it wasn't something with the change of the season. But then I looked it up, and this is on target to be one of the worst allergy seasons we're going to encounter in 2025. Partially because, there's a lot more pollen in the air. Um, but basically some of the worst, and I'm not even near the worst place, where allergy, according to the group that the southern and southeast parts of the US are going to be the worst than any other reason, which made me drool. Um, that's why it's pseudo live. Anywho, the south and southeast regions are going to be the worst. So I don't even know why I'm complaining. I mean, it could be worse. I could be in North Carolina.
Well, what's making it worse this year?
What's making it worse this year? What's making it worse is that there is, well, I mean, it's climate change. And that's pretty much what's making it worse.
Really?
According to this article, due to climate change, the growing seasons are starting 20 days sooner,
Mm.
which means um, 30 years ago, we would have had a little bit of a respite. Likewise, the first frost is occurring 10 days later. So, pollen seasons, what used to be like, do you remember when pollen season was just like 2 times a year? It was like in the fall, there was like this little part where there was pollen and people had bad allergies. And then the spring, like the beginning of the spring, and then the summer, you were okay. Now, this means ragweed pollen, which is what most people are allergic to, could be around all year round, meaning you get no respite, you get no break. Now, I will say, I did allergy shots when I was a kid because I had such bad allergies when I was a kid that I couldn't even breathe. Like, and I'm back to an inhaler too. That's how bad my allergies have been this year. That says a lot. Um, but I had the shots and I felt a lot better. And now I feel just like I did when I was like 10 years old, and like would go to my mom like, "Oh, my nose." Like I'm send me to school with an entire box of tissues. Except now this box of tissues is going to be all year round. So I just, you know, I really wish we would start thinking about the impact on my delicate sinuses if we're going to continue to push destroying the planet. because it's fine if we wanna change the climate, because like, everybody likes it warmer, but no, we don't want more pollen. So please, can we not? Because my allergies are just on fleek right now, as the kids say. No kidding.
Well, I'm gonna talk about something that we talked about earlier today, hydration. So, me being me,
Are you gonna tell me to hydrate my nose?
does water consumption improve allergies? Yes, staying hydrated by drinking plenty of water can help improve allergy symptoms. Dehydration can lead to higher histamine levels, which contribute to allergy symptoms. So, staying hydrated can help reduce those symptoms. Additionally, water can help thin mucus, making it easier to cough and sneeze, and can also help dilute irritants that trigger allergic reactions.
There's not enough water in the world.
Let's just
As
drink.
we all sip
Let's
water.
drink to that.
No, but it's like year-round pollen. I thought I was confused when I went out to my car last year, and I was like, "Why is there green stuff all over my car so soon?" Right? I thought I was imagining the pollen was starting sooner, but it's true. The pollen is all the time now.
Here's the thing.
Don't like it.
Yeah, I'm looking out and I can see the green stuff on the ground. It happened like overnight, like yesterday, overnight. Here's the thing, because you talked about allergies in the spring and fall, and see, I've never suffered, knock on wood, from allergies. I say that, but I've been paying attention, and I'm like, sometimes my nose is stuffed up, and I don't pay attention to it. Maybe it's always stuffed up, and I've just learned to accept it. But here's the thing that I used to remember about allergies again, because I didn't really suffer from them, so I could be wrong. But I only, at one point, unless I was mistaken, allergies typically just flared up in the spring, right? And then people started complaining some years later about allergies kicking up in the fall too. But when I was growing up, and again, I didn't suffer from allergies, so I could be wrong, but the most prominent time for allergies was in the spring.
Yes.
And now we've got this fall. Then the fall kicked in and people started suffering from allergies in the fall. And now you're talking about, well, you're just going to suffer from allergies
It's all year round.
from spring to throughout fall.
Well, every generation has a cross to bear, and this is theirs. Like, they get to have year-round allergies. You and I got to have seasonal allergies, but, this is our gift to our children, climate change and year-round allergies, along with so many other things. Apparently, the fact that happiness is not related to materialistic products, right? Like, I always thought growing up, if I could only get the thing that I wanted, I would be happy. Now you just told me no. So thanks for ruining all the dreams of children.
Well, but
I'm teasing.
oh, I know, but I was never big on material things. Like my mom was, my brother was. Um,
I wanted a Barbie dollhouse, 100%. I
I mean,
wanted the dream house.
I like my dolls, right? But really, when it came to, I mean, the entire time I lived in New York, 8 or 9 years, the entire time I lived in New York, I don't think I ever went to Macy's. I never went to Macy's. I never went to department stores. I mean, like never. Like I never did.
I went in around Christmas one year. I
Mm-mm.
went with a girlfriend, and she wanted to go see how they do the lights, and, like, the Macy's building had the display that would.
Yeah, the display windows.
Yeah, so we saw that, and we went inside, and I have to say, no offense to New York, I have to say, Macy's was gross inside. It was kinda dirty, and
Oh,
it wasn't
really?
what yeah, like, it wasn't what I thought it would be. Like, for some reason, I had this picture of Macy's, like, I don't know, Audrey Hepburn-y, like, magic, and it was not really like that. It was just another department store. Now, granted, I was older. I was in my I wanna say I was in my early 30s when I finally got to Macy's, um, but I was surprised that it wasn't as fancy or whatever as I thought it was gonna be. It was just a store, like, selling crap. Like, you could get, like, you know
That crap was better than the crap that they're selling now, because you could probably get a linen or get wool or get a natural fiber. But and if I did go to Macy's, if I did, it was only once, and I don't think I even bought anything. I was probably there with somebody else, but I always shopped at secondhand shops or little boutiques and in the in the village or whatever. But I was always the secondhand queen. You know what I mean? I was just I've never been.
and now that's the thing,
Yeah.
right? Like, the secondhand stores and, like, going thrifting.
Yeah.
I went to a thrift store the other day to get something, and it was, like, a skirt for $11.
I just
That should be $1.50,
Oh, okay,
okay?
here we go. Here we go. But I mean, it's very, it's a we live in a very interesting times, and we were talking, earlier, but right now the United States is going through really fighting for its democracy, and a country that has been built on capitalism, and because of trade wars and all sorts of you know um, economic decisions that is going to make it more difficult for people. I wonder if it will break the fever of capitalism, of having to have things and understanding what's really important and what's not important. You know, um, is it really important to be able to buy a million cheap things, or is it, you know, more important to do, for some folks, buying replaces relationships, right? We were
Yeah,
talking
that's
about,
true.
happiness and you know, what we're the legacy that we're bringing, leaving our children. But for some folks, they call it retail therapy, right? There used to be a time where friends visited each other in their homes and in their backyards and sat and had conversations in their kitchen. When the last time somebody sat in your kitchen and had a conversation, hung out with you, right? Or would come, over, or you have church groups, or you have, the book clubs and things of that nature. So it's going to be very interesting. Substitute horrendous. No, but it's going to be very interesting to see, if this makes us change our values about, spending and ownership. And here's the other thing too: if you have less money, you're putting less uh, garbage into the earth. It's going to be very, for lack of a better word, interesting. And then you start to also think about in terms of allergies and things of that nature. And I'm praying, um, a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, the 2020s have been just horrendous. We had a summer of poor air quality because
Mm.
of forest fires in Canada. I've lived in the Northeast all of my life. We've never had that situation. I remember one morning because I had to go get my air conditioning fixed on my car. I let the dog out in the morning, right? I, was doing some things. I can't remember what I was doing. And then I was going to go take her for a walk before I went to take my car in to be repaired. So from the morning, early morning, I went and I opened my door, and the whole landscape, everything, it was like a sepia brown color, right? And I was like, what is this, right? And I didn't realize, or that, that summer we had to contend with our weather people saying, well, basically try not to breathe, like don't
Yeah,
go
don't go
outside.
outside.
Like, well, the outside air does come in, so when you start talking about allergies and whatnot, I think maybe also people might be more susceptible to those kinds of things because we have more pollutants in the air.
We do. We definitely have more pollutants, and it's so interesting because it also depends on what type of pollen you're allergic to, but all the pollens are gonna be out whether you don't like ragweed or tree pollen. There's, and as you pointed out, warmer temperatures too are impacting this. So, when the temperatures are warmer, you got more blooms, which are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful blooms. But it also means that, and this is what's interesting, warmer temperatures extend the blooming season, meaning plants produce pollen earlier and disperse it longer throughout the year. It also means there's more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is what the plants are thriving on. So, more carbon dioxide encourages plants to grow faster and bigger and produce more pollen than ever. Um, so, if I was a fantasist, I would say, like, maybe this is the time that the plants take over. And like they choke us out through their pollen. They're over carbon because human beings, for those who don't know, we don't live on carbon dioxide. Just FYI, in case no one knows that. Um, but it would be interesting to see a world of just plants. What is that? There's a game called Plants versus Zombies my kids used to play, where like the plants would take over or the zombies, right? Like I feel like we might be the zombies in this scenario with a bunch of plants because I feel like a zombie when the pollen kicks in. But it is a little disconcerting because you have a lot of pollen out there. You have a shift in temperature, you have climate change going on. I'm sure you have those who would deny that there's anything called climate change. If you are anywhere in the world right now, you know that temperatures have shifted. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this summer and in the fall. When we get the next seasonal shift, I'm just hoping that it calms down a little bit,
I, I,
so I'm
I
not drooling on every podcast that we have.
I find it really interesting. I find it very horrendous the times that we live in terms of, there's a lot of religious right folks who are Bible thumpers, but I believe there might be some place in the Bible that says that humans are the stewards of this planet, and as the stewards of the planet, I'm always disappointed that people don't err on the side of caution. Even if you don't believe in climate change, there is nothing wrong with making certain that we take care of our planet. There's a big push to want to, keep populating, keep having children, shutting down women's rights to have more children, but you're also bringing them into a less hospitable world where it is overheated, where it is there's drought, where there is higher levels of pollution in our soil. All of us have microplastics in our bodies, right? And so I think, and I think back to one of the best times about COVID was the quiet.
Mm.
right? With the stillness that was during that time. And I think it was in India, and where because there were less cars and diesel fueled automobiles on the road, they could see the tops of mountaintops that they couldn't see before because of pollution.
I
And
think
so,
didn't California have something similar in LA with smog where finally they had a little smog respite?
right. And here's the thing. I'll tell you what, if I were a climate denier, seeing California on fire was that was jarring. I mean, that was like that's not normal, y'all. A city on fire, a major metropolitan city on fire for days. That, that should be the wake up call that any of us need to just make certain that we're doing everything that we can to make the world a better place. So, I have a friend who does, has a whole regiment when it comes to her allergies, neti pots and all sorts of, yeah, all sorts of stuff, but I feel for people who have, chronic allergies because it's not fun.
And I think for most of us, we don't realize how bad our allergies are until we go outside, and having a dog and going outside and walking him, it always confronts you with here's what the allergies are. But for most of us, we do live a lot of life in the US air conditioned. So we get to kind of disassociate from our impact on the environment, and air conditioning is toxic to the environment too. I do want to point that out. The more we put out into the environment, the more we damage it in many ways. And so, if you think about the fact that we now live in a way that takes us out of nature and takes us away from realizing our impact on nature, we do ourselves sort of a disservice because it allows us to be cushioned away from just how much of an impact we're having. And how bad allergies are getting because of our bashing of the environment continuously with our human ways
Interesting.
instead of being stewards.
It's interesting that you mentioned air conditioning because my first thought in my mind was like, well, you know what, kill me now, but you're not gonna mess with my air conditioning, okay?
No,
But
but I mean, it does help
no,
your allergies because you're not
yeah,
going to feel that if
it,
you close all your windows,
and it's
like,
filtered,
yeah,
right?
it's
It's more
filtered.
filtered. But here's the thing that I was thinking about because I am really big on alternative, housing and buildings. And I saw a video about, I think it was an Iranian architect who built these beautiful structures from uh, hay bale, right? Cob homes, right? These homes, and we've seen them oftentimes in England. They can last for hundreds of years, but they're made from the soil that the house is built on, with straw, as well as is there sand? I forgot, it's a combination, but they but the walls in these houses you can't see because I'm on a split screen, but they're really thick walls, right? And they're insulated because of the material that is used, which also means that you have to use less energy to heat it, and the house can keep itself relatively cool even in hot climates because there's so much insulation between the outside and the inside. And it makes me also just think in terms of the kind of, we've really kind of created an existence that really is kind of goes against healthy living. you know I mean, it really does. It goes against it.
We're the aliens here, right? Everything about human beings and some of the way that we live is very alien to nature. Like, if you
It
think
is.
about how we build houses, even like clothing, like, I there are very few other animals, few, any, that wear clothes.
My dog wears clothes.
Well, you put the clothes on it, but, like, by just, like, putting it on,
She
right?
doesn't,
There's a
she
couple of
doesn't like
animals
it.
out there that do it, but, like, it is odd. We are oddlings on this planet. Like, if you look at us and you were to say, "Hey, human beings are animals," we're very strange compared to other animals here on this planet. We make houses that don't rely on nature. We wear clothing, like, we don't use any of our
Well, we lost
resources
our fur,
effectively.
so we needed clothes.
Did we lose our fur?
Yeah,
I
we
think
yeah.
we are the alien invasion.
No, well, we've got the 99.9% of the DNA or 98% DNA of of other primates. So we came from them, but we lost our fur. So yeah, we could wear clothes, but we don't have to have a multi-billion-dollar fashion industry, right? And the one thing you because you talked about Idiocracy, I watched that movie and I was so disturbed by the amount of polyester that was that was worn in that movie. But here's a funny thing about polyester, right? Probably it doesn't degrade. That's probably one thing. But they have found that wearing, and we wear so much polyester, our yoga pants, our stretch stuff, that it has a negative impact on fertility, believe it or not.
Keep wearing those polyester pants, boys. No.
Wear two sets, two sets of polyester pants, please. Please. Asking for a friend. Yeah.
Just trying to keep the birth rate down.
Can we? Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm
So,
just
anything funny trending on social media these days? What I told you earlier that I have been captivated by, and I'm well, now that the tariff is in place, that if I get those little speaking buttons that you can teach your animal to,
oh,
it'll probably cost me $2.5 million. She's looking at me like, please get me one of those buttons because I got some things to say. And so, once you put a heart or like something, you're inundated. The algorithm gives you them. But I really love the things that animals are saying using those talking buttons, and I'm fascinated with them. What's
Melania's
trending with
talking
you?
about wait, let's go back to that because Melania's talking about the buttons that you might see on the internet. I don't know what they're called, and button manufacturer, if you wanna give her some, she will she will play with them with her dog and will let you know if they actually worked. But personally, I don't want any of my pets to be able to talk to me because they already talk to me enough. And I feel like Echo the cat, though the vet did say I should get her those, I don't want to hear what she has to say. I know she's going to say stuff like, you should feed me better. I saw you eat my tuna out of the can, like an animal. I like tuna and I do share it with her. I know she thinks it's her cat food. It's not. And I probably shouldn't give her tuna. I don't know. But like, I personally don't want to hear what they have to say. They talk enough to me with farts and other ways. So,
You know what? I would really like to. I mean, these dogs can have an extensive vocabulary, and I'm looking over at her now. She's looking outside, contemplating life. Probably, she's like. Sometimes I wonder if she's like looking out into space, thinking, I should have gone with that family with the kid. It's like, huh, life choices. you know, I don't know if I really.
or she could just be like, in the next life, I hope I come back as that bird.
Yeah, yeah. At least you're free. You're free. I'm like, I wonder what she would say. One dog actually asked, oh, so the dog was home with the husband, and the dog hit the sad button, and the button
Oh,
goes sad. And so the husband is like, why sad? And he goes, do you miss mommy? And then he goes, hits the cuddle button. Right. And so the husband goes, okay, we can cuddle. We can cuddle. The other one that I saw, is, see, she's whining. The
She's
other
so
one that I
she said
saw
cuddle.
was that the dog went and asked for walk, right? And the caretaker said, "We've been for a walk. We're not going for a walk." And it hit the button, walk, please. And she looked at me and she's like, and I said to myself, she's gonna walk that. She's like, okay. Okay, all right, let me go. She's talking to the dog. Okay, let me go get
See?
the leash
No.
and my shoes. Right? Yeah, I don't need that kind of pressure. Okay.
That's a lot of pressure because I know that they that just think like we're just sitting around waiting to walk them,
Hello.
and that's not what's happening.
No.
Though